Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully, wherever you are, you're getting ready for an exciting Jays game this evening. I certainly am, although I can feel nerves kicking up. My name is Lindsay Telfer. I'm the Director of Engagement at Efficiency Canada. I'll be your host for today's Discovery EE webinar. We have an awesome conversation lined up for you today to explore current work in industrial energy efficiency programs across Canada. I'm super glad to share the floor today with Olivier Capon, Executive Director of Enerva Energy Solutions, and Joshua Sherrard, Director of Energy Assurance with the International Association of Frost Insulators. Before we jump in, I want to take a moment and acknowledge that I'm joining the conversation today from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Huron-Wendat peoples and present-day home of the Chippewa of Rama First Nation, whose reserve lands are just on the other side of Lake Couchiching from me, where I reside in present-day Aurelia. If you haven't been to Aurelia, certainly come on up and check us out. We're 2 hours directly north of Toronto, nestled nicely between Lake Couchiching and Lake Simcoe. If you're new to Discover EE and our work at Efficiency Canada, we are Canada's national voice for an energy efficient economy. In order to maximize the uptake of energy efficiency solutions, we lead in innovative research, drive broad communications to ensure that research is reached and read by the necessary audiences, and we mobilize that research, driving support and champions to advance its implementation. But let's get to today's topics, industrial energy efficiency in Canada. Our two presenters are going to give us a snapshot into some current trends, priorities, and opportunities when it comes to industrial energy efficiency in Canada. To kick it off, I'm going to hand it over to Olivier Capon. Olivier is an accomplished energy and sustainability leader who drives national decarbonization and efficiency initiatives as Executive Director of Enerva Energy Solutions. Olivier, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. This is, I think, the third or maybe the fourth time that I've got to present Discovery E sessions. Really happy to be with you all. Absolutely sharing Lindsay's excitement for tonight's game. I think this would be the third championship if they can do that. I wasn't in the country for the first two, so hopefully I'll be here for this next victory that they're going to have. Happy Friday also to everyone. A bit about Enerva, just generally. We are an organization of about 50 or so engineers, energy analysts, program managers, outreach specialists, and so on and so forth that work specifically with utilities, government agencies, and program administrators to deliver energy efficiency and decarbonization programs. We are very much focused on developing energy analytics software that we then use in our program deployment. We work with organizations like the ISO, like the Métis Nation, like Emissions Reduction Alberta. One of the things that I'm really proud about is we are working to set up an energy management center of excellence, which will actually be a bricks and mortar physical facility, the first of which will be in Calgary. And if I can just get the next slide, Lindsay. Some of the features of the Energy Management Center of Excellence will be an expert hub, a technology and innovation center, and also a center for experiential learning. One of the things that we're going to try to do with that is also try to create a different type of dynamic for capacity building and training with equipment, especially around the Internet of Things and AI, that people will be able to, sensors and EMIS systems and so on and so forth, that people are going to be able to feel and touch. So really looking forward to that. It's absolutely going to be created as a collaboration and knowledge transfer center. So looking forward to collaborating with all of you. And again, having this center be a reflection of the types of tools and information that we as an energy efficiency and decarbonization industry are looking for. Looking forward to sharing more information with all of you about that as it comes online in the next several months. It should be an exciting time. Lindsay, can I get the next slide? Thank you. Just a little preface. I have a feeling that Josh and I are probably going to talk about very different things. I'm going to talk about the importance of energy efficiency to the industrial sector, but I'm also going to highlight a specific program that we're using as a solution, as a regional solution to some of the things that we're seeing. So just a bit of a context on the graph there, you can actually see, and the title of this graph is called The Industrial Implosion. This is something that was actually put out by the National Bank. And you see essentially that V curve with the United States going in one direction and us going in the other and not the right direction. So we know that there are a lot of long-term productivity decline issues and a number of subsectors in the industrial sector connected to manufacturing, construction, wholesale trade, heavy manufacturing, and a lot of others. And you've probably seen over the past 4 or 5 years various statistics pointing towards productivity per worker gaps between Canada and the other G7 nations. Also, the investment that we have in capital industrial machinery, which this graph is specifically focused on, has been weak over the last several number of years and just continues to create gaps. So that's the negative picture, but that does create opportunities, especially when we consider the direct correlation between things like training and productivity and also energy efficiency and as a boon for competitivity and efficiency and operational health generally. Another thing that I think we have an opportunity for is to help facilities integrate new operational guidelines and also match the investments that they make in machinery and equipment when they do make them into new processes that can essentially allow them to do two things. Number one, become more efficient, and number two, save on their operational costs related to energy. Can I just get the next slide, Lindsay? As I was saying before, one of the solutions that we've put forward is alongside Emissions Reduction in Alberta is the Strategic Energy Management for Industry program. So this is a program born out of the GIF&P funding envelope from Natural Resources Canada. It's a $50 million program over the course of 3 years with some additional top-up funding from the government of Alberta. Well, we decided we've been involved, Enerva, in both the design of this program and now obviously the delivery over this 3-year time frame that we have. The program essentially in a nutshell was based around these 5 activities that you see here. Starting with a facility readiness assessment is essentially what would allow us to look at the possibilities that we could extract from individual industrial facilities in the province of Alberta. Then going on to these other activities, the other 4 activities that were part of the program. One was the energy assessments and audits. The second was EMIS, so EMIS installation and getting that up and running for various facilities. Next, the strategic energy management, which is essentially has become a cohort of 60 participating organizations who are participating in both facilitated capacity building and training sessions, as well as additional one-on-one coaching. And then one of the things that really makes this program exciting and dynamic is the fact that we do have a capital retrofit stream. So we actually do have a capital retrofit budget of up to $1 million per facility to implement the tactical and replacement and equipment replacement projects that we talk about with our participants. So just to place you a bit, at the moment, we have just over 170 participating facilities who are actively engaged in any one of these 5 activities. It's been great to see. They've got until March 31st, 2027 to complete these activities. We'll be broadcasting and have been broadcasting some of the success stories that have come out of this. But clearly, anyways, it's been an absolute boon to the industrial sector in Alberta, and it's absolutely something that we'll see how we can work with the federal government partners and others to see how we can replicate these kinds of successes in other provinces, as a lot of the challenges and opportunities that we see in the industrial sector here in Alberta are mirrored in other provinces as well. Lindsay, can I get the next slide? So here's just a very quick, very colorful summary of some of the energy conservation measures that we're actually using in the program. I won't touch upon all of them. Many of these that you see here figure prominently in the capital retrofit project that we end up being able to go through with our participants. And our hope is that we'll be able to have a report on who did what and what the savings ratios were for these various programs. Can I get the next slide, Lindsay? Another thing that we're very proud about with this program thus far is, so we had 2 goals going into this program. One was to have a geographical representation across the province of Alberta. And you can see that we wanted it to be not just in and around the 2 biggest urban areas in the province, which of course are Calgary and Edmonton. And then the other thing that we wanted to achieve is within this program, there were 7 eligible NAICS codes, or North American Industry Classification Codes, of which you can see them there. So of course, manufacturing is the largest along with the oil and gas sector, but we've been able to hit on a number of sectors and have a lot of representation. The other thing that we're very happy about is we've got representation both from for-profit industry as well as not-for-profit and First Nations-owned businesses as well. So not-for-profit, we're defining that mostly as municipal water and water treatment facilities who are also able to participate. Make it the next slide, let's see. I think we'll have time for some Q&A later, but I wanted to give context as to how we're using the semi program here in Alberta as a catalyst to boost two things that we know we need in the industrial sector, which is efficiency and productivity. Thank you, Lindsay.
Awesome. Thanks, Olivier. And exciting to see some of the advancements and uptake in that program. And curious to talk more about what we need to do to scale up. By questions that may come later. Let's turn the table over to Joshua Sherrard, who serves as Director of Energy Efficiency and Assurance at the International Association of Heat and Frost Insulators. I like to say also known as insulators.org, where he leads initiatives to drive mechanical insulation, energy audits, and quality assurance programs across North America. And while we hand it over to Joshua, just a reminder to folks, if you have any questions throughout either of our presentations today, please log them in the Q&A box. We will certainly have some time to have some questions and dialogue after our presentations. Joshua, over to you.
Thank you guys for having me here today. So I'm definitely going to talk on a more niche market with my level of expertise being in the mechanical insulation trade. I'm going to talk about mechanical insulation energy assessments, what value that brings, and what the outlook is for the industrial sector. So mechanical insulation energy assessment. So the purpose that we see in this is to identify missing, damaged, and improperly installed insulation. I've been in this field dating back to 2017. We've completed, I think, upwards of 350 assessments now to date across Canada and the United States. About 90 to 95% of what we find within the industry is in that missing or damaged section. It's insulation that has been removed for maintenance purposes and didn't get reinstalled. So what we're able to do is using thermography, we're able to isolate the energy loss at that point of contact. We're able to calculate what that is costing the facility, and then collectively putting that together, showing the facility a cost-effective approach to their overall maintenance of their mechanical insulation system. The improperly installed insulation, we do come across that in some of the older facilities. We'll see older products being used that hasn't been updated, hasn't been changed. And then some newer facilities, we see just minor issues like not using the proper insulation, not using the proper products. We're able to capture that using the thermography and going from there. Next slide. So just a very quick for anybody that doesn't understand what thermography is. So it's very apparent, as you can see in the pictures. Heat loss is easy to find when you use thermography. It gives us a nice glowing picture to look at. We also find, especially in the food industry, the refrigeration systems, there's cold systems that don't operate, function properly. We're able to capture that as well, but I like using the colorful pictures for my slide presentation just to show you guys what we see behind the camera. And then just talk about how we derive our results. What we're able to do is break down each component within an industrial facility. We can calculate what that looks like for the facility. So an example, you can see on the right-hand side, the digital and thermal picture of some valves. I have the chart showing the data that we pull, and the bottom red square box shows, the top row shows what we inventory. We found a collection of valves that were bare with zero thickness insulation. This facility is losing 93,184 kBTUs per year. We believe that they're spending fuel costs in the amount of $2,844.52 and emitting 5.88 metric tons of carbon by not having these items insulated. And this is very low scale natural gas system, obviously for the temperatures. Just by going with 1-inch insulation system, we can reduce the heat loss to 11,704 kBTUs, so saving roughly 82,000 kBTUs per year. We can reduce the fuel consumption needed to $357.28, saving this facility $2,487 a year, and reducing the carbon reduction to 0.84 metric tons, which saves the facility about 5 metric tons for this one collection of valves. And then we always give an upgrade. The bottom row is just the next upgraded system. We feel that giving decision makers the ability to compare and analyze the data that we provide them. Gives you guys a better understanding of how you move forward, especially we don't live in the same world we lived in 6 months ago, a year ago, or 5 years ago. We work with a lot of industrial clients that becoming more energy efficient helps them be sustainable in staying in business in Canada. So we want to make sure that we're giving you guys the best recommendations for products. We're giving you guys the best recommendations for savings so that you're not overpaying for a product, but you're getting the value that you need to be more competitive and sustainable. Other health and safety benefits with mechanical insulation, with new construction and retrofits and energy efficiency projects, fire stopping measures for containing potential hazards down the road for the facility is something that our team is trained and qualified to assess. So we do that to try to help customers not only move towards a better facility and a more efficient facility, but not losing sight of the safety elements as well. Maintaining your fire stopping system, keeping those components in check. As we go into older facilities, the potential for mold or asbestos is always apparent, whether that's in industrial facilities or even commercial facilities. There's always that potential of, as we go in and we try to make things better, are we creating new potential hazards? So our team is trained and qualified, and we work really closely with the facilities. And I think that is the biggest stopgap for our market, though we are somewhat of a niche market in the big picture. All the components collectively really is a big step forward for the facility and sometimes can be neglected over the years. Next slide, please. So this is just a couple slides that kind of high level overview of what we can see. Pumps and motors is something that's often in our industry left exposed. For maintenance purposes, facilities want to have access to that. Overheating the pumps and motors will cause mechanical breakdowns, sometimes prematurely. So we can avoid that with a removable system that has a Velcro fastening device. So by putting a Velcro fastening device in, your facility can still look at the maintenance aspect, but we can also save that energy over the course of the year when we're not needing to access that pump or motor or valves. It's something that as an industry, I have a background, I'm a red seal mechanical insulator, and I have a background in this energy sector. And I think the biggest component for what I see in the industry is combining the application guidance with that energy saving component. A lot of times we have seen facilities jump in and try to make improvements in their energy efficiency, and then they run into maybe an asbestos problem or something that was unforeseen. In this aspect, if you don't look at a removable system, then your facility struggles with their maintenance. Being able to tie the application side with energy saving is really benefited for our customers, and we see that across the industry. Next slide. Steam traps is something, again, most facilities that still run steam. I know we're in a time where a lot of facilities are trying to get away from steam, but some facilities just can't do that collectively at this time. They have long-term plans for it. But in the meantime, if you're doing an annual steam trap audit, you need access for these, we can recommend a removable system with 2 or 3 Velcro straps that saves and conserves that energy 364 days a year. And then you just remove that for that one day that you do your annual inspection. And heat exchangers, I just give examples of common components within the mechanical system that can be insulated with mechanical insulation that we can see huge savings. The pumps and stuff, we see facilities that have some pumps, each pump is $300 to $500 a year in savings. When you look at a pulp mill, they could have hundreds and hundreds of pumps throughout their system. It doesn't take long for those savings to add up. The same with heat exchangers. When we're trying to become more sustainable on a long-term outlook of being sustainable in our market, in the current climate that we're in, every bit helps with becoming more efficient with that. The other aspect that we look at is freeze protection. So obviously in the industrial sector, the biggest thing is staying operational. A lot of our facilities that we work with, it's not profitable. It's not great to be in a business that has to shut down unexpectedly. So I just have a little chart that kind of shows just by insulating 1 inch thick fiberglass insulation on domestic cold water piping. It greatly reduces your risk of exposure to bursting piping and stuff. And the industrial sector definitely see the value in this, especially this time of year. We're flipping the switch. As much as we're all looking forward to a few baseball games that hopefully go our way, the temperature's about to switch here in Canada. Next slide, please. And then I put some projects on here. So these are some of the industrial clients that we have worked with and that we've successfully performed some assessments for, that have moved ahead with some of these projects. You can see that over the range of clientele that we see, the savings are there. The gigajoule savings can be quite high, and the return on investment is rather good. All of these projects are under 2 years. There is a range depending on the size of the facility and the cost per project, but all in all, we will continue to try to work with facilities for the future and hopefully pushing us towards next steps of the global impact on carbon reductions and that aspect. And I just put my contact information. If anybody after this comes up with a question, please reach out. We're happy to help. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to speak. This is the first time that I've ever done a webinar. Hopefully it wasn't boring for everybody.
No, I think quite contrary. I think it was super exciting to see both of your perspectives from, I would say, a larger kind of systems based, Olivier, the work that you guys are doing at scale in Alberta. And Joshua, I think you really driving into the specifics around what happens in these facilities when we're doing energy assessments and retrofits. I want to start off with a little bit of a big picture question to you both. I think one of the threads that kept coming up to me as you were both presenting was, are we seeing uptake across the industrial sectors for energy efficiency upgrades? And what do we need to reach to get to scale, right? To really drive reductions across sectors and across industrial facilities. So I wanted to start off at that big picture. Olivia, maybe if you want to kickstart us, I think of your map and the sectors of influence. And then Joshua, certainly from your perspective, what are you seeing with regards to uptake in the sector, broadly speaking? Olivier, over to you first.
Sure. The first two things that are needed on a general scale are obviously expertise and money and financing. One of the things, though, I did want to highlight that I really find an interesting takeaway from the programs that we've been running, especially here in Alberta, is that even with the capital retrofit aspect to this program, there are a lot of projects that have really long paybacks, especially when you're just looking at the energy savings length alone. A lot of them have long paybacks. So why would they do these projects anyway? That's where I really think it's interesting for the industrial sector. And Josh, you probably see that all the time as well. They're doing it anyways because it helps with their capacity issues. It helps with things like production flexibility, which they desperately need. As Josh said, we're not in the time that we were in 5 years ago in terms of either our competitivity or, of course, obviously the elephant in the room, the tariff situation and things like that. So when you have periods like this, the unit economics has completely changed. And so therefore, the industrial sector has to respond to that. Other things that they're able to do through these investments that they're making, aside from just the energy savings alone, or labor costs savings, and also improving that labor productivity, which I just talked about before with those stats that we saw, that is trailing behind our competitors. I think that's really interesting, as well as all the other things that we could talk about, like reducing abatement costs, asset renewal, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that I think we'll have to make this a mission, Josh, myself, other organizations, is also to make sure that aside from the energy benefits, which of course are important, that we also capture these real world tangible benefits, especially for industry, given where we are in economic times, to make sure that we package that value proposition to industry in the right way, so they just go forward with more and more projects that can allow them, again, like I was saying before, to up their game in terms of competitivity and productivity.
Awesome. Thanks, Olivier. Josh,
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, in our industry, we're seeing a huge uptick in the last year, more than we've seen probably in the last 3 or 4 years, because facilities are looking at this in a greater lens. A lot of facilities that may not have had energy managers on site previously are now hiring energy managers, and they're bringing teams together to become more energy efficient. I think with the GIF MP and other programs out there, we've talked about it. I think there's more education being given to that. So they're seeing that value. I think facilities are understanding that. And like Olivier said, facilities are looking at long-term projects. It's not just a quick return on investment. We're in a different time and people see that and they understand that. And sometimes it's the carbon savings element, a corporate mandate to reduce our carbon. Sometimes it's not just about energy savings. And we work with some customers that they just don't have the output that they need to maximize their profit margin. Being able to become more efficient, help that is a big step for them.
Awesome. Thanks, Joshua. You mentioned GIF-MP, so the Greener Industrial Facilities Manufacturing Program. I think if I have that acronym
Yeah,
correct.
you got it.
Brought up the federal government. We're 2 weeks away from a federal budget. What are you both going to be looking for? And while you answer that, there's lots of questions in the Q&A. If folks want to go in there, you can upvote ones that you really want to hear answered live. So over to you guys both. What are we looking for in the budget? And then we'll turn to that Q&A to answer some questions.
The budget's going to be really interesting. So just peel back for a second, Lindsay, about the Green Industrial Manufacturing Programs. I think that was launched in 2023, and there are essentially two streams, one of which they relaunched a couple of times, but essentially there were two streams. One was a regional stream, getting regional programs off the ground. I believe they funded 4 of them, one in Newfoundland, one in Nova Scotia, one in Ontario, and then one in Alberta, the one that we're involved with. Then they also did facility level investments. And I think in the first, which they call track 2, and I believe those facility level investments that they made, I think covered 16 or 20 facilities. And then they just recently put out another call for proposals for those individual facilities. Unfortunately, that's closed now. It would have been great to highlight. Hopefully some of you have gotten involved there or involved in 5 or 6 of those projects. So it has been a boon to it. But again, just coming back to what Josh and I were talking about, it's not true that the federal government is going to be able to step in there with as much funding as we need to cover all of these projects, which is why just highlighting both the energy cost savings potential of all these kinds of solutions, plus those non-energy benefits that I was highlighting before is going to be key. Going back to your actual question about what I'm going to be looking for, I think it's going to be really interesting. I would love to see, of course, if there's going to be individual amounts for GIF-MP refunding, or for DRE recapitalization. That's maybe just me selfishly, but I don't think it's going to come to that program level. I think what we're going to see, what I'm going to be looking for is how much funding is allocated to each different department, specifically, obviously, in my case, NRCan and ECCC, the Environment and Climate Change Canada office as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see where that distribution comes from. We've been hearing a lot about these national programs, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that if I had a message to the federal government, it would be, when you look at these national programs that they're thinking of investing in, a lot of them, let's say you're doing an LNG plant, or let's say you're investing in bolstering the local economy in steel or aluminum. A lot of those programs will only ever return 5, 7, 10 years down the road in terms of these massive building projects. They're not going to order this equipment right away. It'll be 5 years down the road or more. But some of the things that we can do, and that's where I think Efficiency Canada and others have a real role to make sure that our interests are represented, because a lot of the things that we can do are tactical and we can do them now. So hopefully we'll see some opportunities for that in the budget. But really, overall, I'm just going to be looking at where they dole out the money to which ministries and how the ministries then go and take that back and actionize that into programs.
Awesome. Joshua, any additions there?
I think the GIF-MP program is wonderful. I've worked with the Track 2 version of that, working with the facilities and getting that capital money for improvements. My counterpart had said, there's not a world, I think, where the federal government's going to be able to step in and fund the entire of all these projects. I think one of the biggest things is understanding the resource demand when these tracks become available. A lot of facilities, it's a small window. Generally, you get 6 to 8 weeks to apply. Being ahead of that and having a lot of your legwork done makes that process simple, because it can be a daunting task to apply for. I think the federal government is on the right track, at least with having these programs available. I know the last one just closed, and I'm hopeful to see that it's extended for the future, because I know a lot of clientele that have benefited from it, but there's a lot of clientele that could benefit from it. I think promotion of the program, it's not as well known as what you would expect coming from the federal government. A lot of facilities don't know that it's available, and a lot of facilities are working with their provincial incentive boards, and there is the opportunity to partner the federal programs with provincial programs as well. I think promotion is something that I hope to see more.
Great. Awesome. I think one of the themes that I heard across both of you in those answers was there's an important role for the federal government to play. We want to see that role continue. They're not the only solution, the only kind of opportunity to advance this work. Thank you both. We've got lots of questions. I'm going to try to rapid fire through a couple of them. We've got lots of people wanting to know details. So, Josh, I think this one I'm going to direct towards you. How are plate heat exchangers typically insulated? And what sort of insulation solution is applicable?
So what we generally recommend is a removable pad system that is like a silicone cloth membrane on the outside with an insulation inserted in the inside. It allows to be installed. It's weather protected for the facilities. And then there's a Velcro fastening system that connects all the pieces together. Essentially, we're building a removable box of insulation around the heat exchanger.
Awesome. Thank you. Another technical question here. If insulating pumps and motors can cause overheating, how do you address that issue when you do insulate them?
That is a concern that we face. You have to be very careful when you're insulating pump that you're not insulating the motor itself. Coming from the application background and experience, we make sure that when we make those recommendations that we work with the facility to make sure that the specifications match what they need to so that that is not a factor. The last thing we want to do ever is make a recommendations and create a new problem. As I talked about, our goal is to reduce the potential problems and risks for facilities. By staying back and keeping a space around the motor, it will let it exhaust some heat so that it doesn't affect the pump motor, but you still conserve energy for the rest of the pump itself.
Awesome. Thank you. Olivia, I'm going to direct this one to you. Joshua, I think you may have an answer too. So let me know if you want to jump in. The question is around building envelopes. And so I'm curious, in the facilities you've been working with in Alberta, are you seeing the sort of increased insulation improvements of building envelopes as a key opportunity?
Yeah, Josh can probably speak to this as well, but building envelope in general, they're not necessarily the easiest measures to get a lot of savings out of. And that's even more the case in a lot of the industrial facilities that are part of the program that we're running here in Alberta. Most of the, and actually maybe I'll put in the chat, and maybe it'll be interesting, some of the measures that are being the most popular in the program. Building envelope upgrades are covered, but I would say that they're not the most common. What we're seeing, of course, is the thing that you would expect. A lot of HVAC system retrofits, a lot of VFDs, a lot of solar, things of that nature. So they are covered, but I wouldn't say that's primarily where people are focusing on, just because of, again, the savings versus the cost and that payback that we were talking about earlier. Josh, over to you.
Yeah, just bring up GIF-MP again. So a good example to back that up is there's thresholds with the application process. So the building envelope stuff, you don't really see a huge gigajoule savings. So with the GIF-MP program, then paying $3 per gigajoule, the HVAC systems, the electrification of boilers, different processes that really have a bigger output, you're going to get a higher return from the grant incentive money. So less cost for the facility potentially than the building envelope stuff.
Cool. Interesting. There was one question around whether or not we're seeing any uptake from data centers and cogen systems included in the industrial sector.
Great questions. As it pertains to data centers in the SEMI program, unfortunately, they're not eligible simply because for a couple of reasons, but the regulatory framework in Alberta around data centers is different than what it is for most of the industrial sector. And as I said before, the funding for this program comes from the GIF-MP program and Enerva, but also with a top up from the government of Alberta. And so that's just part of the rules and regulations of how the program was set up. And then the question around the cogeneration, however, those types of things are eligible within the programs. If that's of interest, I would look at that. And Lindsay, just very quickly, I was just sifting through the questions. I did notice there was one also about availability and the fact that somebody had seen that the SEM program is fully subscribed, but 60 participating facilities in that. However, the program as a whole, so from the FRA to the capital retrofits and the rest of it, are still available. So maybe I'll just put a link to the program in the chat. But anyways, yes, it's still accepting applications.
Great. I think maybe we have time for one more question. And I'm just trying to pull one out. Olivia, there's been some requests for your contact information. I don't know if you're willing to share with folks in the chat. There certainly have been some requests there.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And then, Joshua, I'm going to go into this one from David Elfstrom. Has there been anything related to insulating outdoor compressed air lines? One of our customers, they found they had to over dry the compressed air relative to their normal amount to reduce the risk of water vapor freezing in the outdoor portions of the line. I'm curious what your experiences are with respect to that kind of challenge.
So actually, that's a new challenge that I've just recently, I'm working with a customer in a pulp industry facility that is struggling with that. We're working through that. So what we're trying to do is figure out by electric heat tracing the airlines and then insulating them properly, can we prevent that from happening? So what they had happening was there was a buildup of moisture and then it was actually freezing the vent lines and causing some major problems to their production system. It's a new problem. I will say I didn't expected to come across that. And it's weird that I got a question on that today because I just run into that in the last 2 weeks. I don't have an answer as of yet because we're still troubleshooting and working towards that, but I can share that once we find the solution.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both so much. I learned a lot about industrial energy efficiency at the micro level and at the macro level. So thank you both for sharing those perspectives. I think some exciting conversations moving forward, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you all for coming out today. As we sign off, you will be invited to answer a short 3-question survey on the webinar today. We're actively developing our 2026 webinar series. So if you've got any ideas of content that you'd like to hear, what would be most valuable for you, please do share. Our next Discovery on November 7th, I've hinted towards it in our conversation today, will be an Efficiency Canada panel as we reflect on the federal government's budget in the first week of November. So hope to see you there. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Have a great day and go Jays, go.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.